everyone. So today we are going to discuss about the homologous series and functional groups. First, we are going to discuss what are functional groups, and then we move forward with homologous series. When it comes to the term functional group, what is a functional group? A functional group is defined as a group of atoms, an atom or a group of atoms or any chemical bond which causes to act as a characteristic property of that organic compound, which exhibits a characteristic property in that organic compound, or which exhibits unique chemical properties in that organic compound, is known as functional group. Let's say if you have an organic compound which is represented by R, that organic hydrocarbon chain which is represented by R, which is known as the alkyl radial. Alkyl radial, which is having its general formula CnH2n plus 1. This is a general formula for the alkane for the alkyl radical, and this is represented by R. Whenever we form a bond of R, because R has got one valence electron, due to which it can form one bond with a functional group, and that functional group formed can be represented by any symbol based on the type of functional group which is being added. Let's say we add the functional group X. X represents halide group. Halide group means the addition of halogens as the functional group is known as the halide group. So in this manner, R would be representing alkyl radical, X would be representing halide group, due to which Rx would be collectively called as alkyl halides, due to which Rx would be collectively called as alkyl halides. So in that sense, this is how we classify functional groups. When it comes to the concept of functional when it comes to the concept of functional groups, they basically uh, are known for their same chemical properties. We cannot identify all of the organic compounds by because there's a huge diversity of organic compounds. There are more than 6 million organic compounds, and we cannot learn each and every one of them. So on the basis of the functional group which they possess, we can easily understand the characteristics of that organic compound. So in that sense, if we increase the if we identify the functional group, we can easily identify the chemical properties of the organic compound, such that if there's same functional group, there is same chemical property of that organic compound. And the R radical basically represents what? It represents the physical properties. If the value of R is increased, the value of N in R is increased, then at that moment when the number of carbon atoms are increased, there is an increase in the physical properties of the organic compound, which includes melting point, boiling point, and solubility. Now when it comes to the concept of functional group, we've got the following functional groups which are essential to remember. Before moving on to those, I'll just give you a concept of homologous series. That homologous series are what? These are basically the series of these are basically uh, known as the sequence in which the organic compounds are classified into similar groups. Now functional groups have their significance because functional groups are necessary for three major reasons. Number one, they help in naming or nomenclature of the organic compounds, with which organic compound has which characteristics. On the basis of the nomenclature or the naming, we can easily identify their name. And second classification is second major reason for studying functional group is chemical reactivity, because whenever there is a reaction with an organic compound, then in that reaction the organic compound's functional group causes to perform a chemical reaction while losing or gaining of electrons, not losing or gaining of electron, but by you know you know taking part in the chemical reaction, due to which the functional group is involved directly in chemical reaction, due to which it plays role in chemical reactivity. And the third reason is classification. Functional group can be the major cause on the behalf of which we can classify the organic compounds into different classes. And these classes which are in which the organic compounds are classified, due to which each class represents a particular chemical property, is known as the homologous series. Now, there are certain characteristics of homologous series. If there is one homologous series, which means, let's suppose if we take alkane is a homologous series. Alkanes or paraffins, these are the homologous series which have the same chemical properties, and their physical properties vary depending on the number of carbon atoms. As the number of carbon atoms increase, the physical properties also increase in alkanes. They can be represented by general formula. For example, for alkanes it is CnH2n plus 2. It is a general formula for alkane. We do not need to memorize the entire equation, but after based on the number of carbon atoms we can easily classify alkanes. CnH2n plus 2. Likewise, if you say alkenes or olefins or alkenes have their general formula in CnH2n, and alkyne have their general formula as alkyne, or we also call them as acetylene. Alkyne or acetylene have their general formula CnH2n minus 2. Now, when it comes to the homologous series, each in homologous series, the physical properties of the organic compound are increased by an increase in the by the addition or removal of a methylene group in the homologous series. By the addition or removal of the methylene group in the homologous series, there is an increase or decrease in the physical property of the organic compound. Now let's suppose if we add methylene, if we have methane. Methane is an alkane, right? Methane, right? Now what I'm going to do is, alongside, instead of methane, I'm going to add, I'm going to draw the structure of ethane. And what actually, if I'm supposed to draw the structure of ethane, then how am I going to draw the structure of ethane? Is in that manner that in methane I'm going to add CH2. When I'm going to add CH2, the then it will the formula will look like this: C2H6. We are not going into the structure formula of it. Even if we draw the structure formula, there is no such significance. It's like this is the structure of ethane, right? So what we actually have done is added the methylene group, which is CH2, and when we add or remove methylene group, which is having its atomic mass unit as 14, which is having its atomic mass as 14 AMU, then at that moment we can say that by the addition and removal of 14 AMU methylene group, we can vary the physical properties. If methylene group is added, physical properties are increased. If methylene group is removed, then physical properties are decreased. So in that sense, this is how the homologous series work. And one more thing that I like to highlight over here, that the general formula basically represents the similar characteristics, similar chemical properties of the homologous series. We are also going to see in this chart as well. As I previously mentioned, that functional group does not really need to be atoms or group of atoms. These can be bonds as well. Now let's suppose alkane. Alkane is a functional group. Alkane has a functional group which is basically known as the chemical bond, single bond, which is present in it. So the single bond which is present in it, the sigma bond which is present in it, serves as the functional group. It has no name for this functional group because it's of course having single bond and it's common, so we can simply say that single bond is the functional group in alkane. And in alkene, the functional group is double bond. Alkene is characterized by double bond, due to which alkene is having a double bond as its functional group. Alkyne is having triple bond as its functional group. On the other side, arene or benzene is having the benzene ring, which is a hexagonal ring having alternate single and double bonds uh, in its structure as its functional group. After which we have haloalkane. Haloalkane, or we also call these as alkyl radicals. Alkyl halides. These are known as alkyl halides, or also known as haloalkanes. But actually, they represent the halide group which is present in them. And each functional group is having its own characteristics. So we are going to study that in our upcoming classes. Alcohol, which is also known as alkanol. Alcohol, also known as alkanol, which is added which is simple, which is due to the addition of an hydroxyl group. This is hydroxyl group. When hydroxyl group is added to alkyl, then it causes from alcohol or alkanol. When ether group is added, then this is known as when there is oxygen on the surround, which is having two alkyl radical attached to it on its either side, then it is going to form ether group. So this is known as ether group, and this is how the functional group is ether, and the linkage is also known as ether link. Epoxide. Epoxide is a group in which the oxygen. Epoxide is a group in which there is oxygen on one end side, and on both of the oxygen we have carbon, and rest two carbons are attached to the oxygen, and rest of the valencies of carbon are occupied by the radicals. On the other side, we have aldehyde group. Aldehyde and ketones are basically known as carbonyl compounds, carbonyl groups, such that aldehyde is also a carbonyl and ketone is also a carbonyl. The aldehyde group is known as the formyl group. This group, which is C, represented by CHO, this is basically an aldehyde formyl group. This is a formyl group, and the compound is named as aldehyde, or we also call this as alkanal. Alkanal. And ketone is also known as alkanon. It is basically the name of the compound, and the group which is added over here is known as the carbonyl group. Such that in carbonyl group, what actually happens is that we've got carbon over here. There is oxygen on one hand side. On the other hand side, we have got two radicals, two alkyl radicals, and after that, when it comes to a thiol group is a one which is also known as the mercaptan. In common language, we call this as mercaptan, and in IUPAC name, it is named as alkane thiol or thiol alcohol. So, in that sense, this is thiol alcohol or alkane thiol. In common name, it is known as mercaptan. So R and SH over R is the alkyl radial group, whereas SH is the thiol group, which basically is the also known as mercaptan. On the other side, we have got sulfide group. Whenever we are adding sulfur, then this causes to form an other group, which is known as the sulfide group. On the either side of the sulfur, we have an alkyl radical, which is known as sulfide group. The disulfide bridges, which we study in the structure of the disulfide bridges, which we study in the structure of tertiary protein, are also having the sulfide group. On the other side, we have amine group. Amino acids are having an amine group inside their structure, NH2. So, as a result of amine group attached, the structure of amino acid becomes basic, due to which they tend to act as amphoteric molecules in the form of zwitterions. That's another thing. So over here, amine group basically gives basicity, and what actually amine groups is represented by is amine group has basically got nitrogen and two hydrogen atoms bonded to it, and alkyl radical group bonded to it. This is what we call as a basic structure of amine group. In this diagram, we instead of the hydrogen atoms, we have represented hydrogen atoms by R as the um, hydrogen atoms. So in these two R's basically represent the hydrogen atom, and one R represents the alkyl radical. Nitrile. Nitrile is a group in which there is a triple bond between carbon and nitrogen. This is known as a nitrile group. In IUPAC, we call this International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry, Pure and Applied Chemistry. We use this as nitrile group. But if we talk about its common name is cyanide. Its common name is cyanide. So this is R is alkyl radical, and CN basically is the nitrile group, or in common words we can also call this as cyanide. On the other side, we have acid halide. Acid halide is one in which we have got the carbon atom is on the main position. On one hand of the carbon atom, we have got oxygen attached to it, and on the other hand, we have got any sort of halide attached to it. It's not necessary it should be chlorine, but any sort of halide, which is fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, can be attached, which can represent the halide, acid halide inside it. All right. After that, we have carboxylic acid, one of the most famous crops which we have studied in biology. That what actually happens is we've got carbon having a bond, double bond with oxygen, and on the other side, carbon is a bond with OH. This causes to form the carboxylic acid group, carboxylic acid group, and this is like the group which provides acidity. It causes to provides acidity to the compound. On the other hand side, If we talk about ester, carboxylic acid is also known as alkanoic acid. It is also known as alkanoic acid. Ester is basically what we call as a modified form of carboxylic acid. Over here, instead of hydrogen atom, there is the there is the replacement of hydrogen atom with any sort of alkyl radical. Alkyl radical is added, due to which it is represented by R dash. On the other side, if we talk about another complex functional group, we have got anhydride. Anhydride is the functional group in which we have got the central atom oxygen, and around the oxygen we have got the carbon atoms, which are themselves bearing one oxygen with a double bond. Now we can easily just get a conceptual idea of how the number of bonds are being formed. Oxygen is having its valency as 2, which means it can only form 2 bonds. So it has formed 2 bonds and completed its valency by forming bonds with carbon. Carbon is having 4 bonds. So carbon is, since carbon is having 4 bonds, one bond is formed with this oxygen, and another bond and 2 bonds are formed with the upper one oxygen, due to which only the capacity of carbon to make one more bond is only with uh, any sort of group which is having one as its which is having its valency as 1, due to which what we are going to add over here is the alkyl radical, and this structure would be basically known as the carboxylic acid anhydride, and this functional group is known as the acid anhydride group. Right, after that, when it comes to the amide group, acid amide group is the one in which acetamide group is the one in sorry acetamide group is the one in which we have got carbon, which is having oxygen attached to it, and on the other side we have got NH2 attached to it. Again, these R dash are basically representing the two hydrogen atoms, and it is basically the NH. So NH2. So in that sense, this is carboxylic acid. It's simply the modified form of carboxylic acid. That is why we name this as acetamide, and this is basically the acetamide group. C. On the other side, we have a double bond of oxygen. On the other side, we have NH2 applied to it. So on the one hand side, we have got C making a double bond with oxygen. On the other side, we have the NH2, which is making bond with um, carbon. So this is all about it. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. We'll meet in another video.